Throughout history, wars have been disastrous for both sides. In fact, it could even be argued that the side that started the war has suffered more. Russia recently started a war with Ukraine, but in terms of its consequences, this war cost Russia dearly and resulted in Russia's weakening. While you subscribe to my channel and like my video, I explain to you 10 signs that Russia is losing power. 10. Economic signs. The most devastating impact of war is on the economy. Especially for the side that started the war, the biggest problem is the economy. It has been the same for Russia. The tensions in the Russian economy are increasing. Both the cost of the war and the economic embargoes have weakened the Russian economy. If the war continues, economic collapse will be inevitable. Many Russian soldiers have died since the war started. Many Russian men of working age have been conscripted to fill the shortage of soldiers. This points to long-term economic hardship. The decline in the number of workers is the biggest indicator that the economy is getting weaker. The decrease in the labor force brings with it an increase in the price of products. The decrease in purchasing power as a result of high inflation paves the way for social explosions. 9 social signs. Protests called Put Domoy, the way home, have recently taken place in Russia.
Если вы уйдете сейчас, у России появится шанс не стать страной-изгой. России нужна демократия.
The protests are the biggest sign that the war is no longer wanted by the people.
Путин – это война. Без войны он не удержится у власти.
When economic difficulties arise and inflation rises, it is obvious that the Russian people will organize more protests. Therefore, Russia needs to end or win the war as soon as possible. Polls conducted in recent months show that the Russian people are getting war-weary. In the poll, 56% of Russians want the war to end. Only 39% think that the war should continue. 8. Major military losses. Many people thought that Russia was a great power going into the war and would invade Ukraine without a fight. But this was not the case at all, because Russia was very confident. It thought that the Ukrainian people would welcome it as a hero. As soon as Russia entered Ukraine, it met with fierce resistance. It was something it never expected. That's why it suffered great losses, thanks to the financial and armed support provided by the US and many European countries. Ukrainian forces inflicted heavy losses on Russian forces. According to a US intelligence assessment, Russia has lost 87% of its total regular ground troops since entering the war. It has lost 2/3 of its tank inventory. 7. Increased political pressure. War has political as well as economic and social effects. Both domestically and internationally, Russia is in a more difficult situation than ever. Due to the high number of casualties in the war, Putin has started to lose power domestically. The suspicious death of Navalny, one of Putin's biggest opponents, in prison shows that Putin is afraid of losing power. 6. Russia's arms imports. In recent months, a report in the world press has shown that Russia is in a difficult situation in the war. According to the news, Russia was importing weapons from South American countries. The biggest reason for this is Russia's economic embargo. At the same time, the fact that it has less power to run the war economy is one of the biggest reasons for importing weapons. But there is another important reason. 5. Russia's arms inventory is too old. Russia is in danger of losing the war because it has too few new-generation weapons. Most of the combat vehicles in the Russian inventory, including armored vehicles, especially light infantry rifles, are from the Soviet era. In other words, weapons used 35 to 40 years ago. Ukraine, on the other hand, can procure sophisticated combat vehicles from many countries. In other words, it receives state-of-the-art weaponry. This is one of the main reasons why Ukraine has the upper hand in the war. 4. Embargo. Before the war, Russia imported 85% of its legal services from G7 countries. 59% of this figure came from the UK. Many Western law firms withdrew all their Russian clients. Many have also closed their offices in Russia. On February 28, 2022, Canada banned crude oil imports from Russia.
President Putin continued his brutal assault on Ukraine.
On June 8, Canada banned all services to Russia's oil, mining, gas, and chemical industries. On March 8, 2022, the United States banned oil, gas, and coal imports from Russia.
That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine.
On 23 February 2024, the U.S. imposed trade restrictions on 63 entities. In addition, the U.S. imposed more than 500 sanctions on Moscow and its accomplices for their financing of the war and the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. 3. Mobilization, forced migration, and conscription. The majority of the population in Russia declined due to mobilization, forced migration, and conscription. The number of emigrants in Russia has increased due to the war. As a result of the deterioration of the economy due to the embargoes, the number of people leaving for foreign countries has increased, and the labor force in Russia has decreased significantly. According to some reports, Russian military casualties have reached $200,000. 370,000 people have left the country due to compulsory military service. Of course, these are official and estimated figures. In reality, there are those who state that this number is much higher. 2. Increased arms dependence on North Korea and Iran. Everyone now knows that Iran and North Korea are natural allies of Russia. The United States and many European countries have imposed many sanctions on Iran and North Korea. Especially the embargoes imposed on Iran are quite high. Naturally, Iran and North Korea are on Russia's side. As a result of the use of Soviet-era weapons in the war with Ukraine and the destruction of many Russian combat vehicles by Ukrainian forces, the Russian need for weapons has increased. It seems that there are only 2 countries where the Russians can meet their need for weapons. In other words, the Russians are in dire need of weapons from Iran and North Korea. This is the biggest sign of Russia's declining power, because it is really tragic for Russia to go from being an arms exporter to a country that needs arms. 1. Nuclear threat. Russia is backed into a corner and has begun threatening to use nuclear force against countries that oppose it. This is the biggest indicator of Russia's declining military power, because it could not invade Ukraine with military power. It faced sanctions from many countries. Since its military and economic power is weakening, it is threatening to use the last trump card it has left. For Russia, the use of nuclear power may be a final solution, but it would have very serious consequences, because other states also possess nuclear power. If Russia uses nuclear power, the whole world could be plunged into catastrophe. But Russia would be the only country that would lose, never to win again, even if it does not use nuclear power. If the war does not end soon, the Russian people will start to revolt and perhaps a civil war will break out. A civil war would be Russia's undoing. So, what do you think about this? We would be glad if you express your thoughts in the comments section. If you want more of this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, press the like button, and follow our channel.